coach to between 4 to 6 people. That's the challenge. So what I want us to think about, if coaching is the essence of our service offering and program design really is the map, okay? So it's the framework or the narrative, we can call it a story, right, for your coaching practice, then really program design are the rules to the game which create then the freedom for the coach to express themselves, all right? So I want you to think about this. Program design creates this conduit really between the coach, the Clint, not the Clint, client, right? Within here, this is where we have the space and the freedom to operate and to coach, all right? So the coach goes into a session with some ideas around success and intentions for that actual day. They meet the clients, and then they have the freedom then within these boundary walls, to operate as a coach, to do what's necessary to facilitate those optimum challenges. And that is what we're in the business of creating. Okay? So, a statement I want you to keep in mind, and I'll write it down, just bear with me. Learning occurs when an individual voluntarily faces optimum challenge. There are keywords in there. Learning, voluntarily, optimum, and challenge. Okay? So what do we mean by learning? It's not just a handing over of knowledge. To truly learn, we need to understand. And to understand, we need to have taken action, we need to have embodied it. So then what we need to be careful of is that what they actually embody, what they take action in, is of use and enables them to fully understand. Okay? If we jump too far in tabling challenge, the chance of them learning is very slim because they're into chaos. Okay? So they panic at that point. It's like, I need to get this thing done, but I'm beyond learning. I'm in survival mode now. Okay? So think about the zone of proximal development. Zone of proximal development, again, we go through this in FFC. But it's a developmental thought process used for children as it happens. This middle piece is where they currently stand. So this is safe space. Okay? So this is everything they've currently learned. They're comfortable in this is comfort. Okay? Comfort. The outer ring is chaos. Okay? So this is too much challenge. And then this middle ring here is optimal. One step away from comfort. Okay, so it's just a step forward. And that's what we talk about when we talk about iterative challenge. The optimum challenge is literally the next challenge. Okay. This piece, because people tend to at that point have 1 foot on safe space and 1 foot in that challenging space. Okay. At that point then, they're unstable enough and challenged enough that they have to adapt. But they're not too unstable in here, where they have to then delve into their survival mode and figure out, how am I going to get through this thing? They can actually, learning takes place here, in this ring. So that's where we're aiming. We're aiming for that next step of challenge. So, when we talk about learning being both knowledge plus action plus understanding equals learning, only occurs when an individual, I'll come back to voluntarily faces optimum challenge. So it's this piece, okay? Think about how that would play out if we just had a very set and rigid program design. So again, back to the push press. Today's 5-5 push press. The only thing that you can change is the weight, all right? How is that going to facilitate optimum challenge to everybody in that space? You might be lucky. You might have 5 or 6 people who are at the same level, in which case that's absolutely fine. And that's a good prescription anyway, right? But chances are you're going to have some who are further towards the beginner end of the spectrum, probably some in the middle, and then maybe a couple who have been coming for the last 2 to 3 years, they're more advanced. If it's fixed in that nature, we're not going to challenge all 6 or 5 of those people optimally. Okay? So we need to have the ability to be agile in order to facilitate this. The voluntarily piece. The member needs to feel like it's their choice. Okay? So again, it needs to be something that probably makes sense to them as far as the progression is concerned. So this needs to be aligned. needs to be authentic. This needs to be aligned to both the system and the client. And then this needs to be authentic to what we say we're going to do from the outside coming in, okay? So that's our promise. This is what we deliver. This is what we believe in this thing. You know what you're here for, really. So that's the authentic piece. Once those two things are in place, then it can be their decisions. They're like, okay, cool. I understand what's going on here. I'm going to make the decision. I'm going to take responsibility for this to be my next step of challenge. So then the coach then becomes the guide, all right? So through this process, this freedom, rather than the coach having to tell people what to do because they haven't got the space to have a proper conversation, that would be in this system, okay, where we're in a logistics thing. You need to do that, you need to do that, you need to do that. In here, we've created the space now to do some proper coaching, to hand over the baton of responsibility to the client where's needed. All right. So of course the beginner's going to be less so. We're going to guide them a little bit more. But as we move into intermediate and more advanced, they should be taking more responsibility. Questions like, today is lunge pattern. What did you do last week? What do you think the next progression is going to be for you this week? Or what do you feel like today? You know, and then you can have a conversation around that. Responsibility handed over. At that point, where we go, that's voluntarily. Okay. Even for the beginner, they understand at this part that they're going to be taught more. Right. So they're not going to be forced or directed, but they're going to be taught. Still going to be a collaboration. It's still a you and I thing, and there's still a voluntary element. It's like, at that point, they're volunteering to sort of hand over a little bit more of the responsibility in order for the coach to guide them more. But still, they're part of the process. Okay, so they shouldn't just be told. They're still part of the process, and that's a key piece for me. That voluntarily. Okay, so it's the same thing around fears, and people have a lot of fear in gyms. People getting over fears comes from volunteering to be exposed to it. Think about that. It's the same here around challenging the gym. Volunteering to be exposed to these iterative challenges, that's the key. So then, in delivery of it, we need to think in our system how we create space, okay, to enable that to happen. So, going into the session, the coach needs clarity of the aim, so that's the intention of the day, okay? They also need, one step above that, the nature and style of the system, the overall system, in order to facilitate what's playing out on the gym floor. That includes then the definition of success. We need to consider the experience of the coach, okay, within that system. How able are they to handle this level of freedom? Or do they need more guidance? Okay? And again, that's for you to think about how you manage that. It might be that you need a more senior coach with the newer coach in order to show them the ropes, to teach them. Okay? So we're coaching coaches at this point. We shouldn't just expect a young coach to slot into a system and just fill in a gap on the timetable. If we want that coach to make a difference and to feed into our overall system, ultimately to help the client to move forward, we need to teach them how to do that. So we need to figure out within our system how we're going to do that. It might be that you have some sort of an apprenticeship phase or an intern phase or something along those lines where it's clear that there's earning these stripes before you get to a point where you can go alone on the gym floor and manage this scenario. Because this is real coaching. It's not just instructing. It's not just I know how to instruct what's on the whiteboard. This is taking what's on the whiteboard, as in the patterns, understanding it in my mind so that I can create optimal challenge for each of the individuals that are in place, that are in front of me. There's a lot in that. We know that, right? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts in there. So the experience of the coach is a big one there. Turn a blind eye to that at your peril, really. You need to really consider that. And then, of course, we need to be thinking about the client. And this, in PSA land, what we talk about is who plus why plus what equals how. So this is the person. This really, their why, that's their intention. And this is the function. So this is probably going to be what's happening in that class on that day. What are the movements in that class? And that tells us then the how. Well, this should also be the function of the individual. We need to consider what their function is and what they're here for, what their ultimate function is, in order to develop this. So we don't need to be taking, if people earn the right to dynamic contractions in the hinge pattern, we need to really consider their function as to should we be delving into certain movement types, i.e. snatches, etc., etc. Maybe, but maybe not. And that's where we need to think about the client's function as well. Okay, not just moving people along progressions just because they exist. So then all that dictates the how. And that's where the coach needs to hold all of that in mind. This is where the experience comes in. When you're delivering the challenge on the gym floor every day. So, hey, well, that's coaching. That's the real deal. And that's what we want to try and instill in your gyms, is this the highest level of coaching. So that when people come to your website or your Instagram page or they come and pay a visit to your gym, they ask how much it is. It might be considerably more than the gym down the road. Well, the proof will be in your career. You'll be doing some real coaching, some proper coaching. And I think this is going to be even more rare as we move forward and technology becomes more involved with fitness, where class systems that are just instructor-based will probably be replaced by AI at some point in the future. And then we need to future-proof ourselves really with this sort of level of coaching so that we can show and prove our value. We're human to human, and the reason why we feel that's important is because of all this, because we feel that your requirement, your how, your function in all this is key, and we're going to do our best to uphold that, and that's what I'm talking about through the execution and delivery. Hope that's useful.